Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon and watched the alien ship approach through the main viewing screen. The vessel looked nothing like any human design he had ever seen. It was made of what appeared to be crystal and metal fused together in impossible ways. The ship moved without any visible engines or thrusters. It simply glided through space like a fish swimming through water. Jake had been commanding exploration missions for 15 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. First contact with an alien species was supposed to happen, according to the protocols they had trained for countless hours. The reality was much more overwhelming than any simulation. The communications officer turned toward Jake with wide eyes. Her hands trembled slightly as she worked at her console. The alien ship was sending signals on multiple frequencies. Some of the transmissions contained mathematical sequences that clearly showed intelligence. Others seemed to be attempts at establishing a common language. Dr. Lisa Carter stood next to Jake on the bridge. She was the mission's expert on biology and had spent years studying the possibility of alien life. Her excitement was obvious, but she maintained her professional composure. She had been waiting her entire career for this moment, and now it was actually happening. The alien ship stopped moving when it reached a distance of exactly 1 kilometer from the USS Horizon. This was clearly a deliberate choice. The aliens understood concepts like safe distances and peaceful intentions. They were showing that they did not want to appear threatening. Jake opened a communication channel and spoke slowly into his microphone. He used the standard first contact greeting that had been developed by Earth's best linguists and xenobiologists. The message was simple and mathematical. It expressed peaceful intentions and a desire to communicate. The response came within minutes. The alien transmission was complex but contained clear mathematical proofs and what appeared to be star charts. The aliens were showing their knowledge of science and their location in the galaxy. They were also demonstrating that they understood human mathematics. Dr. Carter worked quickly to decode the alien message. She had help from the ship's computer systems and the translation software that Earth's scientists had developed for exactly this situation. The process took several hours, but eventually a basic communication protocol was established. The aliens identified themselves as representatives of something called the Zephyrian Collective. They seemed to be a confederation of different species that worked together for trade and mutual benefit. The translator was having difficulty with some concepts, but the basic meaning was clear. The alien ambassador requested permission to board the USS Horizon. Jake consulted with his senior officers and with Earth Command through quantum communication. The decision was made to allow the meeting. This was the moment that humanity had been preparing for since they first looked up at the stars. The alien transport was unlike anything in human experience. It appeared to be made of the same crystal material as their main ship. The vessel approached the USS Horizon's docking bay without making any sound. It connected to the human ship through some kind of energy field rather than a physical docking mechanism. Ambassador Veltar was the first alien to set foot on a human vessel. The ambassador was tall and graceful with skin that seemed to shift colors like oil on water. 4 arms moved independently as Veltar walked. The alien's movements were fluid and elegant in a way that seemed almost like dancing. Dr. Carter was chosen to conduct the initial cultural exchange. She had prepared for this moment by studying every theory about alien psychology and communication that human science had developed. The reality was both easier and more difficult than she had expected. Veltar spoke through a device that translated thoughts directly into sound. The ambassador's voice was melodic and pleasant to human ears. The translation was not perfect, but it was good enough for basic communication. Veltar seemed genuinely curious about human culture and technology. The conversation began with simple exchanges of information. Dr. Carter explained human history in broad terms. She described Earth and the solar system. She talked about human technology and their recent development of faster-than-light travel. Veltar listened carefully and asked thoughtful questions. The ambassador explained that the Zephyrian Collective had been watching Earth for many years. They had observed human development with interest and some concern. They had waited until humans developed interstellar travel before making contact. This was apparently standard practice for their civilization. Veltar seemed impressed by human achievement but also puzzled by some aspects of human behavior. The ambassador asked many questions about human motivations and goals. Some of the questions were difficult to answer because they involved concepts that did not translate well between species. The meeting was proceeding smoothly when Admiral Frank Hayes contacted the ship through quantum communication. The Admiral wanted to participate in the historic first contact meeting. Jake granted permission, and soon Admiral Hayes appeared on the bridge through holographic projection. Admiral Hayes was enthusiastic about the contact with the Zephyrian collective. He immediately began discussing humanity's plans for space exploration and expansion. The Admiral spoke with obvious pride about human achievements and future goals. His enthusiasm was infectious, and even the crew seemed energized by his words. The Admiral described humanity's systematic approach to space colonization. He explained the planned expansion into nearby star systems. He talked about terraforming, technology, and the establishment of permanent human settlements. He used words like conquest and occupation to describe humanity's expansion plans. Veltar's skin began to change colors more rapidly during the Admiral's presentation. The ambassador's translator was working harder to keep up with the rapid flow of technical and military terminology. Some concepts seemed to be causing confusion or concern. Dr. Carter noticed that Veltar seemed troubled by certain words and phrases. The ambassador's body language suggested growing anxiety or confusion. The translator was making clicking sounds as it struggled with military terminology and expansion concepts. Admiral Hayes continued his presentation with growing enthusiasm. He described humanity's plans for 17 different star systems within 50 light-years of Earth. He talked about massive colony ships and permanent territorial establishment. He used phrases like strategic expansion and systematic colonization. The meeting reached a turning point when Veltar's translator began making distressed sounds. The ambassador's skin turned colors that clearly indicated alarm or shock. Veltar raised all forearms in what appeared to be a gesture of confusion or dismay. The ambassador's voice carried a tone of disbelief when the translation finally came through. Veltar was asking questions that did not make sense to the humans. The ambassador seemed to think that humanity was planning some kind of attack or invasion. The confusion was obvious, but the source was not clear. Dr. Carter realized that something important had been lost in translation. The concepts that Admiral Hayes was describing with such enthusiasm were being interpreted very differently by the cool alien ambassador. A major misunderstanding was developing, and it needed to be resolved quickly. The first contact meeting had begun with such promise, but now seemed to be heading toward confusion and potential conflict. Both species had peaceful intentions, but their different approaches to expansion and colonization were creating unexpected problems. The next few hours would determine whether first contact would be remembered as humanity's greatest achievement or greatest mistake. The emergency session at Earth Command began within hours of the first contact incident. President Helen Rodriguez sat at the head of the massive conference table in the Global Space Council chambers. Representatives from every major nation and space agency had gathered either in person or through holographic projection. The mood in the room was tense but excited. Dr. Carter's preliminary report had reached Earth just as the confusion with Ambassador Veltar was becoming apparent. The translation difficulties were concerning but not unexpected. Every xenobiologist had predicted that first contact would involve communication problems. What they had not anticipated was the specific nature of the misunderstanding that was developing. Commander Alex Turner stood before the assembled leaders and began his presentation on the Stellar Expansion Initiative. This was humanity's carefully planned approach to colonizing nearby star systems. The program had been in development for decades and represented the combined efforts of Earth's greatest minds. Turner spoke with confidence about humanity's bold vision for the future. The presentation included detailed holographic displays of the target star systems. Each system had been thoroughly analyzed by space telescopes and robotic probes. The planets had been evaluated for their potential to support human life. Resource extraction possibilities had been calculated. Strategic positions had been identified. Everything was ready for humanity's great expansion into the galaxy. Commander Turner described the massive colony ships that were already under construction in Earth's orbital shipyards. These vessels were designed to carry millions of people along with everything needed to establish permanent settlements. Each ship was essentially a mobile city capable of supporting human civilization for generations. The engineering involved was staggering in its scope and ambition. The terraforming technology that would transform dead worlds into Earth-like environments was explained in detail. Atmospheric processors could change the chemical composition of entire planetary atmospheres within decades. Genetic engineering would adapt Earth plants and animals to alien conditions. Weather control systems would regulate climate patterns. Entire ecosystems could be transplanted to new worlds. Meanwhile, aboard the USS Horizon, Ambassador Veltar was becoming increasingly agitated as more details of humanity's expansion plans became available. The ambassador's skin continued to shift, through colors that the translation system identified as indicating shock and disbelief. The alien's forearms moved in patterns that suggested extreme emotional distress. Dr. Carter tried to explain the concepts more clearly, but the translation barriers were proving more difficult than expected. Words like invasion and conquest were being interpreted very differently by the Zephyrian mind. The ambassador seemed to think that humanity was describing plans for warfare rather than peaceful colonization. Back on Earth, Commander Turner continued his presentation with growing enthusiasm. He described the systematic approach that humanity would take to claiming new territories. Military terminology was used freely as Turner explained concepts like strategic positioning and territorial control. The language was precise and efficient, but clearly designed for expansion and dominance. The holographic displays showed detailed invasion plans for each target system. These were not military invasions in the traditional sense, but rather comprehensive colonization strategies. Every aspect of claiming and developing new worlds had been carefully planned. Resource extraction timelines were established. Population distribution patterns were mapped. Administrative structures were designed. President Rodriguez listened to the presentation with obvious pride in human achievement. The scope of humanity's ambitions was breathtaking. No previous civilization in human history had attempted anything on such a massive scale. The colonization of entire star systems represented a new chapter in human evolution and expansion. The presentation reached its climax when Commander Turner described humanity's ultimate goal. The plan was not simply to establish a few colonies in nearby systems. Humanity intended to spread throughout the local region of the galaxy. Hundreds of worlds would eventually become human territories. The human population would grow from billions to trillions as new worlds were developed and settled. Ambassador Veltar finally interrupted the ongoing communication with a question that revealed the depth of the misunderstanding. The ambassador's translated voice carried tones of horror and disbelief as the question came through the communication system. Veltar was asking why humanity was planning to invade their own homeworld. The question brought all conversation to a complete halt. Everyone in both locations stopped speaking as the implications became clear. Dr. Carter realized immediately what had happened. The translation system had been interpreting humanity's expansion plans as invasion plans directed toward Earth itself, rather than expansion outward from Earth. Dr. Carter quickly began to explain the misunderstanding to Ambassador Veltar. She spoke slowly and carefully, choosing words that would translate clearly. She explained that Earth was humanity's home and that they had no intention of invading or attacking their own planet. The invasion plans were directed outward toward empty star systems that contained no intelligent life. The explanation seemed to help, but Veltar's confusion only shifted, rather than disappeared. The ambassador began asking new questions that revealed even deeper cultural differences between human and Zephyrian approaches to expansion. In Zephyrian culture, expansion was apparently a very gradual and cautious process that took centuries to accomplish. Commander Turner tried to clarify humanity's approach by explaining the historical context. He described how humans had always been explorers and colonizers. From the earliest migrations across Earth to the settlement of Mars and the moons of Jupiter, Humanity had always moved boldly into new territories. The expansion into interstellar space was simply the next logical step in human development. The concept of gradual expansion was foreign to human thinking. When humans decided to colonize a new area, they committed completely to the project. They brought families, industries, and entire cultures to new locations. They transformed the environment to suit human needs. They made new places truly part of human civilization, rather than simply establishing temporary outposts. Ambassador Veltar struggled to understand this approach. The Zephyrian collective apparently expanded by requesting permission from local authorities and slowly establishing small research stations that gradually grew over centuries. The idea of transforming entire worlds and moving millions of people was completely outside their experience. Dr. Carter realized that the misunderstanding went far deeper than simple translation errors. Two completely different philosophies of expansion and colonization were meeting for the first time. Humanity's bold and aggressive approach was shocking to aliens who were accustomed to much more cautious and gradual methods. The communication session continued for several more hours. As both sides tried to bridge the cultural gap, Ambassador Veltar gradually began to understand that humanity was not planning warfare but rather the most ambitious colonization effort in galactic history. The scale and speed of human expansion plans were unprecedented in the ambassador's experience. As the session concluded, it was clear that both species had much to learn about each other. The initial misunderstanding had been resolved, but it had revealed fundamental differences in how humans and aliens approached growth and expansion. These differences would need to be carefully considered as the relationship between the species developed further. General Patricia Lewis arrived at the USS Horizon through emergency transport, just as the communication difficulties with Ambassador Veltar were reaching a critical point. The general had been chosen specifically for this moment because of her expertise in human expansion history and her ability to explain complex military concepts in simple terms. Her presence was intended to help bridge the growing gap between human and alien understanding. The general brought with her a comprehensive collection of historical records that documented humanity's approach to exploration and colonization throughout their history. These records included everything from the earliest human migrations out of Africa to the recent settlement of Mars and Europa. Each example demonstrated the same pattern of total commitment that characterized human expansion efforts. General Lewis began her explanation by showing Ambassador Veltar images of early human exploration on Earth. She described how humans had spread across every continent and adapted to every possible environment. From frozen Arctic regions to burning deserts, humans had found ways to survive and thrive in places that seemed impossible to inhabit. This adaptability was a fundamental characteristic of human nature. The presentation moved through human history, showing how exploration always led to permanent settlement. When humans discovered new lands, they did not simply visit and leave. They brought their families, their animals, their crops, and their entire way of life. They transformed new territories to match their needs and made them into new homes. This pattern had repeated throughout human history without exception. Ambassador Veltar watched with growing fascination as the historical examples unfolded. The alien's skin began to shift toward colors that the translation system identified, as indicating intense interest and curiosity. The ambassador asked many questions about human motivations and the reasons behind such aggressive expansion patterns. General Lewis explained that humans did not expand gradually because that approach felt incomplete and unsatisfying to the human mind. When humans found a new place that could support life, they immediately began imagining how that place could be improved and developed. They saw potential rather than just existing conditions. They envisioned possibilities rather than accepting limitations. The general showed detailed records of the colonization of Mars that had begun 50 years earlier. The red planet had been completely transformed through massive engineering projects. Atmospheric processors had thickened the air and added oxygen. Polar ice caps had been melted to create oceans. Genetic engineering had created plants and animals that could survive in the modified Martian environment. The planet now supported over 10 million human inhabitants. Europa presented an even more dramatic example of human determination to make hostile environments livable. The ice-covered moon of Jupiter had required the construction of massive underwater cities beneath the frozen surface. Geothermal energy systems had been built to provide power. Artificial ecosystems had been created to provide food and maintain atmospheric balance. The technical challenges had been enormous, but humans had overcome them through persistence and innovation. Ambassador Veltar seemed particularly surprised by the scale and speed of these transformation projects. The alien asked detailed questions about the timeline involved in terraforming entire worlds. When told that Mars had been transformed in less than 30 years, the ambassador's skin shifted to colors indicating shock and disbelief. General Lewis explained that humans approached terraforming the same way they approached all expansion projects. They committed completely from the beginning and worked as quickly as possible to achieve their goals. Gradual approaches were considered wasteful and inefficient. When humans decided to make a world livable, they used every available resource and technology to accomplish the task as rapidly as possible. The presentation continued with examples of human mobile city technology that was currently under development. These massive structures could house millions of people while traveling between star systems. Each mobile city was essentially a complete human civilization that could survive independently for centuries. They contained farms, factories, schools, hospitals, and entertainment facilities. Nothing was left to chance in human expansion planning. Dr. Kevin Martinez joined the conversation to provide anthropological context for human expansion behavior. He explained that humans were naturally restless and curious creatures who felt compelled to explore and claim new territories. This behavior had evolved over millions of years and was deeply embedded in human psychology and culture. Martinez showed Ambassador Veltar examples of human art and literature that celebrated exploration and expansion. Every human culture had stories about brave explorers who ventured into unknown territories and established new settlements. These stories were told to children from an early age and shaped human attitudes toward growth and expansion throughout their lives. The anthropologist explained that humans did not simply want to visit other worlds. They wanted to own them, transform them, and make them into new versions of Earth. This desire went far beyond simple colonization. Humans wanted to recreate their entire civilization on every world they touched. They wanted to bring Earth itself to the stars, rather than just bringing humans to other planets. Ambassador Veltar asked about the concept of ownership and how humans determined which worlds belonged to them. The question revealed another fundamental difference between human and Zephyrian thinking. Humans claimed ownership of worlds by transforming them and making them suitable for human life. The act of terraforming itself established human rights to a world in human legal and cultural thinking. Captain Morrison explained that humans did not recognize the right of empty space to remain empty. If a star system contained no intelligent life, humans considered it available for colonization and development. They saw unused resources and undeveloped potential, rather than pristine wilderness that should be preserved in its natural state. The conversation revealed that humans viewed the galaxy very differently than other species. Where Zephyrians saw a collection of separate worlds and systems to be approached carefully and respectfully, humans saw a vast frontier waiting to be claimed and developed. Every empty planet was a potential new Earth. Every uninhabited system was a future human territory. General Lewis concluded her presentation by describing humanity's ultimate vision for galactic expansion. The goal was not simply to establish colonies in nearby systems. Humans wanted to transform the entire local region of the galaxy into human space. They envisioned thousands of terraformed worlds supporting trillions of human inhabitants. They planned to bring human civilization to every corner of the galaxy that could possibly support life. Ambassador Veltar sat in silence for several minutes after the presentation ended. The alien's skin cycled through a complex pattern of colors that the translation system could not fully interpret. When the ambassador finally spoke, the words carried tones of amazement and something that might have been fear or excitement. The ambassador stated that Zephyrians and other galactic species approached expansion as visitors who tried to disturb existing conditions as little as possible. Humans approached expansion as transformers, who changed everything they touched. The E.G. difference was so fundamental that it represented completely different philosophies of existence and growth. Ambassador Veltar immediately contacted the Zephyrian High Council after the presentation ended. The communication array on the alien ship created a quantum link that connected directly to the council chambers on the Zephyrian homeworld. The technology allowed for instant communication across vast distances of space. The Council had been waiting anxiously for updates on the first contact mission. The High Council consisted of 12 ancient beings from various species that had joined the Zephyrian Collective over thousands of years. Each member represented a different world and culture within their peaceful confederation. They had guided galactic politics for longer than human civilization had existed. Never in their vast experience had they encountered anything like humanity's approach to expansion. Elder Zixweir was the oldest member of the council and had lived for over 3,000 Earth years. The ancient being had witnessed the rise and fall of numerous civilizations throughout the galaxy. Elder Zixweir had seen species emerge from their homeworlds and join the galactic community dozens of times. Each previous contact had followed predictable patterns of gradual integration and careful expansion. Veltar's report created an immediate sensation among the council members. The ambassador described humanity's expansion plans in detail and explained the fundamental differences between human and galactic approaches to colonization. The council listened with growing amazement and concern as the scope of human ambitions became clear. The traditional galactic approach to expansion involved requesting permission from established authorities before undertaking any colonization efforts. New species typically spent centuries establishing small research outposts and gradually building relationships with neighboring civilizations. The process was slow and cautious, but it maintained peace and stability throughout the galaxy. Elder Zixweir asked detailed questions about human terraforming technology and timeline expectations. When told that humans could transform entire worlds within decades, the ancient being's reaction was one of complete disbelief. Most galactic species required centuries or millennia to make minor changes to planetary environments. The speed of human transformation was unprecedented. The Council reviewed records of every species that had ever joined the galactic community. None had approached expansion with anything resembling human aggressiveness and scale. Most species were content to slowly develop their homeworlds and perhaps establish small colonies on one or two nearby planets. The idea of systematically claiming and transforming dozens of star systems was completely foreign to galactic thinking. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity continued developing the technology needed for their ambitious expansion plans. Engineer Carol Stevens was working on revolutionary faster-than-light drives that could move objects as large as planets. The new engines used quantum manipulation to fold space around massive objects and transport them across interstellar distances. The technology would allow humans to literally move worlds to more convenient locations. Stevens explained her work to a gathering of Earth's top scientists and engineers. The planetary transport system would make it possible to rearrange entire star systems according to human preferences. Dead worlds could be moved into habitable zones around their stars. Resource-rich asteroids could be positioned for easy mining. Gas giants could be relocated to provide better protection for inner planets. The implications of planetary transport technology were staggering. Humans would not simply adapt to existing conditions in alien star systems. They would reorganize those systems to better suit human needs. The level of environmental control was far beyond anything that galactic civilization had ever attempted or imagined. Biologist Ryan Clark was simultaneously developing portable ecosystem technology that would make terraforming faster and more efficient. His artificial biospheres could be deployed on any world and would rapidly establish self-sustaining environments suitable for human life. The systems included everything needed to create breathable atmospheres, fertile soil, and stable weather patterns. Clark's ecosystems were designed to be completely independent and self-regulating. Once deployed, they would automatically adapt to local conditions and begin transforming the planetary environment. Multiple ecosystems could be deployed on the same world to create different climate zones and environmental conditions. The technology would allow humans to create Earth-like conditions on virtually any planet. Back on the Zephyrian homeworld, The High Council was struggling to understand the implications of human expansion plans. Elder Zixweir convened an emergency session that included representatives from every major galactic civilization. The topic was too important to be handled by the Zephyrian collective alone. The entire galaxy needed to understand what humanity represented. The emergency galactic assembly included over 50 different species from across the local region of the galaxy. Each civilization sent their most experienced diplomats and scholars to participate in the discussions. The meeting was the largest gathering of galactic intelligence in over 1,000 years. The topic of human expansion was considered important enough to justify unprecedented cooperation between normally separate civilizations. Representative after representative expressed shock and concern about human expansion plans. Some civilizations viewed humanity as a potential threat that needed to be contained or controlled. Others saw humans as an opportunity to solve problems that had existed for millennia. The debate was intense and revealed deep divisions within galactic society about how to respond to humanity. Several younger species expressed admiration for human boldness and ambition. They had grown frustrated with the slow pace of galactic development and saw humanity as a catalyst for positive change. These species wanted to learn from human methods and perhaps adopt some human approaches to growth and expansion. Older civilizations were more cautious and expressed concern about the potential disruption that human expansion might cause. They had spent thousands of years creating stable, peaceful relationships throughout the galaxy. Human aggressiveness and rapid expansion could upset the delicate balance that maintained galactic peace and prosperity. Ambassador Veltar found himself in an unexpected position during the Galactic Assembly. The ambassador was developing a growing fascination with human methods and ambitions. Despite the obvious differences between human and Zephyrian approaches, Veltar was beginning to see value in human boldness and commitment to transformation. Dr. Carter noticed changes in Ambassador Veltar's behavior and responses during their continued conversations. The alien was asking more detailed questions about human expansion technology and methods. The ambassador seemed particularly interested in human attitudes toward change and growth. Something about humanity's approach was resonating with deeper aspects of Zephyrian nature. The Galactic Assembly continued for several days as civilizations debated how to respond to humanity. Some wanted to establish restrictions on human expansion to protect galactic stability. Others wanted to form alliances with humanity to benefit from human technology and methods. The debate revealed that galactic civilization was more divided and uncertain than it had appeared. Elder Zixweir made a surprising admission during the final session of the assembly. The ancient being acknowledged that galactic civilization had become stagnant and predictable over the centuries. Most species had stopped growing and developing in meaningful ways. They had become comfortable with existing conditions and stopped dreaming of new possibilities and achievements. The truth about galactic stagnation emerged during a private conversation between Ambassador Veltar and Captain Morrison. The two had developed an unexpected friendship during the weeks of cultural exchange that followed the initial contact incident. Their conversations had grown deeper and more personal as both began to understand the fundamental differences between their civilizations. Captain Morrison had invited the ambassador to join him in the ship's observation lounge where they could watch the stars together. The setting was peaceful and informal, far removed from the formal diplomatic meetings that had dominated their interactions. In this relaxed environment, both were able to speak more honestly about their thoughts and concerns. Ambassador Veltar's skin displayed colors that the translation system identified as indicating sadness and regret. The alien began to speak about aspects of Zephyrian civilization that were rarely discussed with outsiders. The ambassador revealed that the Zephyrian collective and most other galactic civilizations had lost something important over the thousands of years of their existence. The ambassador explained that galactic civilizations had become so focused on maintaining peace and stability that they had stopped taking risks and pursuing ambitious goals. Every decision was made carefully and slowly, to avoid disrupting the delicate balance that kept different species living together peacefully. Innovation and bold thinking had been sacrificed in favor of predictable routine and gradual change. Veltar admitted that young Zephyrians often felt frustrated and restless within their carefully controlled society. They wanted to explore new ideas and attempt ambitious projects but were discouraged by the conservative attitudes of their elders. The result was a civilization that had become increasingly static and uncreative over time. Captain Morrison listened with growing understanding as the ambassador described the problems that plagued galactic civilization. He began to see that humanity's aggressive expansion plans represented something that the galaxy had been missing for centuries. Human boldness and willingness to take risks could provide the catalyst that galactic civilization needed to begin growing and developing again. The captain shared his own observations about human nature and the driving forces behind human expansion. He explained that humans were naturally restless and curious creatures who felt compelled to explore and transform their environment. This restlessness was often seen as a weakness by more peaceful species, but it was also the source of human creativity and innovation. Morrison described how human history was filled with examples of individuals and groups who had taken enormous risks to achieve seemingly impossible goals. From the first humans who left Africa to explore unknown continents to the modern pioneers who had terraformed Mars, humans had always been willing to attempt projects that seemed too ambitious or dangerous for rational consideration. The conversation revealed that humanity's expansion plans were not just about claiming new territory or resources. They represented a fundamental approach to existence that valued growth and transformation over stability and security. Humans believed that standing still was the same as moving backward, and that continuous expansion was necessary for survival and development. Ambassador Veltar asked detailed questions about human motivations and the psychological factors that drove their expansion efforts. The ambassador seemed particularly interested in understanding how humans maintained their enthusiasm for ambitious projects, even when facing enormous challenges and setbacks. This persistence was something that galactic civilizations had lost over the centuries. Captain Morrison explained that humans approached challenges as opportunities to prove their capabilities and achieve new levels of accomplishment. Failure was seen as a learning experience rather than a reason to abandon ambitious goals. This attitude allowed humans to attempt projects that other species would consider impossible or too risky to justify. The conversation took an unexpected turn when Ambassador Veltar made a surprising request. The ambassador asked if it would be possible for Zephyrian representatives to participate in humanity's expansion efforts. Veltar wanted to learn firsthand how humans approached large-scale projects and maintained their enthusiasm for transformation and growth. Captain Morrison was initially surprised by the request but quickly recognized the opportunity it represented. Human expansion plans had always included provisions for cooperation with other species, but most galactic civilizations had shown little interest in human methods. The Zephyrian request represented the first genuine interest in partnership that humans had encountered. The captain contacted Earth Command to discuss the possibility of Zephyrian participation in human expansion projects. The response was enthusiastic and immediate. Admiral Hayes and President Rodriguez both recognized that cooperation with established galactic civilizations could provide enormous benefits for human expansion efforts. Dr. Carter was asked to develop protocols for integrating Zephyrian observers into human expansion projects. She worked closely with Ambassador Veltar to identify areas where Zephyrian knowledge and experience could complement human boldness and innovation. The combination of human ambition and alien wisdom promised to create something greater than either could achieve alone. Engineer Stevens and biologist Clark were excited about the possibility of sharing their terraforming and ecosystem technologies with Zephyrian scientists. They believed that alien perspectives and knowledge could help improve human methods and make expansion projects more efficient and successful. The collaboration would benefit both species. Admiral Hayes made a presentation to the Global Space Council, describing the unexpected opportunity for cooperation with galactic civilization. He explained that human expansion efforts could serve as a catalyst for renewed growth and development throughout the galaxy. Rather than disrupting galactic peace, human methods could help revitalize stagnant civilizations. President Rodriguez announced that humanity's expansion plans would be modified to include facilities and accommodations for alien partners. Every planned colony would reserve space for diverse galactic cultures. Every terraformed world would include areas designed for different species' environmental needs. Human expansion would become a galactic effort rather than a purely human endeavor. The announcement created excitement throughout both human and galactic civilizations. Young members of various species began volunteering to participate in human expansion projects. They saw the opportunity to escape the conservative limitations of their home civilizations and participate in bold new adventures. Ambassador Veltar made a formal request to the Zephyrian High Council, asking for permission to join humanity's expansion initiative. The ambassador argued that cooperation with humans could help revitalize Zephyrian civilization and provide new opportunities for growth and development. The proposal was controversial but ultimately approved. Elder Zixweir surprised the galactic community by endorsing the cooperation agreement. The ancient being admitted that galactic civilization had become too comfortable with existing conditions and needed the inspiration that human boldness could provide. The endorsement encouraged other species to consider similar partnerships with humanity. 6 months after first contact, the joint human-Zephyrian colony ship departed for the Proxima Centauri system. The massive vessel carried representatives from multiple species along with the technology and resources needed to establish the first truly galactic colony. The mission represented a new chapter in both human and galactic history. Ambassador Veltar's final message to the Zephyrian High Council changed the course of galactic civilization forever. The ambassador stated that humans did not plan to invade Earth, but rather to transform the entire galaxy into something resembling Earth. After witnessing human vision and determination, Veltar believed that galactic civilization should enthusiastically support their efforts. The galaxy would never be the same after encountering humanity's infectious ambition and revolutionary approach to expansion and growth.